everybody, Gina DeLuca here. Okay, today I'm going to be rocking a whole rainbow. Going to be doing a straight pour here. This background color, which I am loving, is a mixture of Amsterdam Permanent Blue Violet and Liquitex Basics Phthalo Blue. This combination is an absolutely gorgeous shade of indigo. The Amsterdam acrylics, you can get these from Fluid Art Company, and they carry all of the colors. I think they might be the only online company that carries all of the colors in the US, so that's a good place to get those. These paints have been mixed with the DecoArt Satin Enamel, the Americana Decor Satin Enamels. This is pure white. And so the background slash base coat color does not have satin enamels. All of the rest of them do, and in ideal circumstances, that would make them all create cells. So the colors they have been mixed with, this is Liquitex Basics Phthalo Blue. We have the Quinacridone Magenta. This is a mix of the Amsterdam Permanent Blue Violet and the Deep Blue Violet from Basics. This is Vermillion from Artist Loft. I have Phthalo Green from Basics, and the yellow is the Cadmium Yellow Deep Hue. Again, these are all mixed with the satin enamel. I do 50% satin enamel, 50% of the other paint. And then that mixture is, all of these paints are 1 part paint to 2 parts Floetrol. You can go up to 3 parts Floetrol and still get a good effect. But if you're using 3 parts Floetrol, make sure you're using a high quality paint, something that has enough pigment in it to carry through that much dilution. And all of the paints that I am using are pigmented enough to tolerate that. If you are using a craft paint, I would only recommend using 1-to-1. Okay, so these are, again, mixed 1 part paint, 2 parts Floetrol, and then they are thinned with water. I used distilled water. It keeps longer. If you are planning on storing your paints, you definitely want to use distilled water. The consistency that we're looking for is about a 2 on my consistency scale. This is making a mound, but it's disappearing quickly. It's making a nice thin, even stream off of my stick. If it's getting thick and then thin, that means that your consistency is inconsistent and you need to mix some more, or that can cause you some trouble when it comes time to pour. Before we get started, have you seen the Fluid Art inspiration cards? If you have, you can fast forward about a minute, but if you have not, what we have are 52 cards. There are 42 technique cards, and each technique card has an associated video here on YouTube that gives you all of the information that you need, the exact paint brand, color, consistency, the recipe, of course, the technique, all of the things that I can't fit onto a card. This is a picture of the painting in that video. This box contains a tip for this particular technique, and here at the bottom, you have the color palette that was used in this painting. And then these 2 boxes can be used as the basis of a 2-color palette, or you can build off of those colors. And we have 8 bonus color palette cards. Each one has 5 color palettes. You can use some of the colors, all of the colors, mix and match the bonus color palette cards with the technique cards, and you have more combinations than you could ever paint in a lifetime. These are available at my website, ginadeluca.net, and also at amazon.com. All right, the first thing I'm going to do here is put some paint in my cup. I need to make sure that I have enough paint for the other paints to react with. Got about 3 ounces in there. And then I am going to lay down my base coat. You'll notice I've already covered my edges. I do that for a couple of reasons. The way that I mix my paints, it's pretty thin. I'm using Floetrol. That is also leads to the transparent nature of what happens on the edges of your painting. Sometimes when it is mixed thin and you're using Floetrol, it doesn't stick to the sides all that well. You can have some canvas showing through, which if you are using a custom blended color like I am, that can be a real pain in the butt if you want to go back and fix it later. So I just make sure that my edges are covered first, and it saves me a lot of time and headache later on. It is a very quick process to cover the edges. It is not a quick process to touch them up after your painting has dried and you're trying to avoid whatever cells might be there. Maybe your cells even look thin. So this just eliminates that issue. I like to troubleshoot before there's trouble. The reason we lay down a base coat is because we want the paints to slide around evenly and easily. If there is no base coat, the first thing that touches your canvas is what's going to stick to the canvas. That is going to be your pour puddle. And you may lose, I shouldn't say may, I should say will lose whatever is on the edges of your puddle, because that is going to be what sticks to the canvas. And the center of the puddle is going to roll over top of the edges. And so you lose some of your composition, or at least you lose some variations on what your composition could be. Sometimes the coolest stuff happens on the edges. This would be why, one reason why, I use the same color for my background as I do for my base coat. If I decide I want to keep what is happening on the edge of the puddle, this allows me to do that because I can just turn it into a negative space piece. But also, if I were using white as my base coat, you can end up with tiny bubbles in the base coat, which we will be popping, but sometimes there are stragglers. And if you miss any of those, they can pop up through your pour later on. And then you wind up with these tiny little white cells in your painting. And there's no white in my painting, so that would stand out. And I would feel the need to go back in later and fix it. Again, troubleshooting before there's trouble. Be sure to check your consistency before adding to your cup. The sauce may thicken upon standing. Okay, I'm going, what color am I going to start with? That's a fantastic question. I'm going to start with the purple. Pouring from up high, I want the paints to sink and churn. Now for blue. And the color that I add last typically ends up in the very, very bottom of the cup. It ends up being the last color that comes out of the cup and winds up becoming the focal point of my pour. So I like to do the color that has the most contrast last. Actually, I'm going to do the orange next. Nope, actually, orange will be last too. Okay. So for this painting, yellow has the most contrast. I will pour that last. And hopefully it ends up at the bottom of my cup. And will give me fantastic contrast and a lovely focal point. The pouring from up high really makes a difference in whether it gets to the bottom or not. If you are uncomfortable with that technique, you can practice in your sink with water. Going to pour some of my base coat / background color over top here, just to give all of those paints an opportunity to react with some of these glossier paints, and saving a bit just in case I need help with the corners. I don't think I will. I have a lot of paint in this cup. Way more than I need, in fact, so. I'm much better at measuring when they're already pre-measured. I'm using these older pre-mixed paints that I did bigger batches of, and I tend to overdo it. That's me. That's what I do. I overdo things. Okay. Oh, I almost forgot to torch the bubbles in the base coat. They are there. Be sure to do it. Okay, I am going to just pour this in the center. I might do a little bit of ring action just to get some kind of design going in there. As I get closer to the end of the cup, I pour more slowly. I get closer to the canvas. Here comes the yellow. Going to give this okay. All right, so let's see what happens here. Doesn't look like much now, but as it sits, more cells pop up. As I pop bubbles, more cells pop up. The underlying layers of paint have bubbles in them, and when the bubbles come up, it brings the paint with it. Matte paints and gloss paints together have a hydrophobic reaction, and the matte paints will push the glossier paints away, and the cells will grow. And if I allow them to grow before I stretch and tilt, that is going to give me boulder cells, which I love. Those awesome blended 3D looking cells. And this part is very important, being patient, allowing the paint puddle to percolate. Let these cells develop before you stretch. I could stretch it right away and get a bunch of cells that are shaped just like this. But that's not what I want. I want these cells to develop first so I can stretch them and turn them into these beautiful 3D rainbow boulder cells. And every time, you'll see, every time that I pop bubbles, little cells pop up and they grow, they expand. And you get some really cool looking cells when you load the cup the way I did, allowing those paints to kind of churn and blend a bit. The beautiful thing about this is a lot of paint. The beautiful thing about the DecoArt paints is they are very opaque, and I do not get a lot of mud. Even if I put an entire rainbow in a cup the way that I did, not carefully layered, no colors in between to keep them separated. I still get separation of color, very, very little muted colors, and typically if I get those, I can just tilt it off, no big deal. But mostly I get some awesome separation. The colors look really cool. Okay, so when this first came out of the cup, didn't look like much was happening, but look at it now. Tons of cells. This whole thing is going to be covered in cells. Don't even know if I could be able to see any of the background color. Sometimes the cells just swallow it up completely. If you want to avoid that happening, I'm just getting rid of some of these cat hairs. Only 2 come for free per painting. Okay. If you want to make sure that you have enough background, if you want to make sure your background color shows through, just use more background than cell maker. Okay, I think this is enough cells. We can get to tilting. It's already starting to run off on its own. I will, typically I hit this corner first, but I'll come here since it's already working its way. So, tilting. Patience, again, patience is your friend. This is going to yield the best result for you. If I were worried about not having enough paint, I would use a corner catcher here, but I'm not worried about that at all. I'm going to come to the opposite side. So determining which corner to tilt first, I usually go with the one that is already kind of setting up for a corner. Maybe it's got a little bit of a corner setting up already. Maybe it's creeping towards that side. Okay, so I've got 2 corners covered. I've brought the weight of the paint back to center before I change direction. That is crucial if you want to keep the shape of your cells. If you wiggle back and forth and change direction willy-nilly, you will wind up squashing your cells back up. This is going to make sure you get the maximum stretch on your cells and that they don't get crushed or turn into zigzags, which is another thing that can happen. Okay, so I'm covered, but now I want to figure out my composition. I have a lot of this purple going on. I think I want to tilt some of that off. And then again, going to bring the weight of the paint back to center. The weight of the paint is going to be wherever your paint is moving the fastest. That is the easiest way to determine that. Okay, and now I'm going to adjust for composition, figure out where I want my focal point to be. That is going to be that yellow center. I don't want it to be in the center. I only want my focal point in the center if I have a square or a round canvas. That is just me. You do you. Those are my rules for me. That is just what makes my brain happy. So I'm kind of working the rule of thirds here. I'm going to do my best to do that anywho. Tucker, what you doing over there? Okay, that looks good to me. I am going to leave this alone and see what happens. I might get some cells popping up within the cells. That can happen. And as you can see, I have lost my background color completely, which is kind of a bummer because it was a really cool color. I guess I'll just have to do another one and use less cell making magic. Okay. Stay tuned for the close-up. Back in a few. Okay, here it is. As you can see, the purple was quite aggressive. This has started to dry. You can see the edges have started to dry, so I do not anticipate any more changes happening. I did get some cool blending in the cells. Would have liked some more blending in the purple sections, you know, like kind of like that. But again, it was very aggressive today. I guess purple just said, today's my day. I'm taking over. But I got some cool blending going on up here. I have that awesome glow going on by using the yellow, putting that in the cup last so that it ended up in the center. That's what gives it the cool glow. But there it is. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed. Please do like, share, and subscribe so that you stay notified of new uploads. Be sure to click that bell. If you haven't clicked the bell, you might not be getting notifications. Lots of my subscribers are not being notified of new uploads. I do want to take a moment to let y'all know that there will be an auction on August 16th, 7 p.m. right here on YouTube. I'll have 30 paintings in the auction. I will have some previews of those paintings coming very soon. So do save the date for that. And yeah, but check out the description box below for links to my PayPal tip jar if you feel so inclined. Not expect it, but certainly very appreciate it. My website, GinaDeLuca.net, where you can find my art and music and the fluid art inspiration cards for sale. And you'll find the link to my affiliates, and you'll find some coupon codes there as well. DecoArt being one of those affiliates, and Fluid Art Company, which is where I got most of the supplies that are being used here. Between the two. What else is there? What am I forgetting? Oh, our Facebook group. Go make some art. Join us there. Post your masterpieces, ask your questions, get some inspiration. A good time is had by most. It is the internet after all. Can't please everybody all the time. But I think that's it. I usually do forget something, and I feel like I am, so I probably am. But that's just how my brain works. It's noisy in there. A little bit of chaos. That's where all the creativity comes from, I guess. All right. That is it for me for today. The cats are scratching on different ends of the house. That's what you're hearing. All right. That's it. I hope y'all have a beautiful day. Now go make some art.